The emergency signal reached Earth 3 days before anyone expected to die. Rebecca Stone watched the holographic display flicker to life in the underground command center beneath New Geneva. Red dots spread across the star map like a disease, each one representing a fallen world. The hegemony had swept through the outer rim faster than anyone thought possible. 12 civilizations reduced to silence in less than 6 months. How many survivors? Rebecca asked the intelligence officer beside her. None confirmed, Admiral. The hegemony doesn't take prisoners. The room fell quiet except for the hum of computers processing data streams from across the galaxy. Rebecca had spent 30 years climbing through the ranks of the Terran Defense Fleet, fighting pirates and settling colonial disputes. Nothing had prepared her for this. A new voice cut through the silence. The Galactic Council is ordering immediate evacuation of all human colonies. Commander Sarah Williams entered the room carrying a datapad. They want us to abandon the outer settlements and fall back to Earth. Rebecca studied the map again. The red dots had formed a clear pattern, moving steadily toward human space. At their current rate, the hegemony would reach the Sol system in 2 weeks. What about the defense grid? Rebecca asked. The Council says it won't matter. Every species that tried to fight them got wiped out in hours. They recommend we focus on evacuation rather than resistance. Rebecca had read the reports. The hegemony used biomechanical ships that could repair themselves during battle. Their weapons adapted to whatever defenses they encountered. Worse, their strategy was always the same. Overwhelming force followed by complete extermination. The other species had tried conventional tactics. Formation flying, coordinated strikes, defensive positions. All had failed against an enemy that seemed to learn and counter every move. Get me a channel to the colonial fleets, Rebecca said. Sarah hesitated. Admiral, the Council specifically ordered. I don't care what the Council ordered. Those are human colonies out there. The communication system crackled to life, connecting Rebecca to ship commanders scattered across a dozen star systems. Faces appeared on the screens around her. Men and women she had served with, fought alongside, trusted with her life. I won't lie to you, Rebecca began. The enemy heading our way has destroyed everything in its path. The Galactic Council wants us to run. They think we can't win. Murmurs of disagreement rippled through the channels. But here's what the Council doesn't understand, Rebecca continued. We're not like the other species. We don't fight their way. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. And we learned something they never did. She paused. Looking at each face on the screens, we learned that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. Captain David Park spoke first. What's the plan, Admiral? Rebecca smiled grimly. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to be unpredictable. Over the next 6 hours, Rebecca outlined her strategy. Instead of massing their forces for a conventional defense, the human fleets would spread throughout the system. They would use every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris as a potential weapon. Most importantly, they would abandon standard military doctrine entirely. The hegemony wins by adapting to their enemy's tactics, Rebecca explained. But you can't adapt to chaos. The colonial commanders listened as Rebecca described unconventional weapons, suicide runs, and tactics that would have been considered insane by Galactic Council standards. Some of the older officers looked uncomfortable, but no one objected. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez called from the Titan station feed. This plan has a high casualty rate. Yes, it does, Rebecca admitted. But the alternative is extinction. By the end of the briefing, every human commander had volunteered to stay. The evacuation ships would carry civilians to safety, but the military would make their stand at Earth. As the connection ended, Sarah approached Rebecca's chair. The Council won't approve this. They'll try to override your authority. Let them try, Rebecca said. By the time their bureaucrats finish debating, the shooting will have already started. She stood and walked to the observation window. Earth hung in the darkness beyond, blue and peaceful. Somewhere out there, an enemy fleet was approaching that had never tasted defeat. They expected to find another frightened species waiting to be harvested. Instead, they would find something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans who refused to fight fair. The next morning, reports arrived from the forward scouts. The hegemony advance fleet had entered human space. Their massive bioships moved in perfect formation, dark shapes against the stars like a plague of locusts. Rebecca activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every human ship in the solar system received her message simultaneously. This is Admiral Stone to all Terran Defense Forces. The enemy has arrived. They think they know what we are. They think they understand how we fight. They're wrong. She took a breath, thinking of all the humans who would die in the coming battle. Today we show them what our species is really capable of. Today we remind the galaxy why Earth never conquered anyone. Because we were too busy learning how to defeat anyone who tried to conquer us. The first explosions lit up the darkness near Jupiter's orbit. The battle for Earth had begun, and the hegemony was about to learn that some prey fights back. The first mistake the hegemony made was sending only 3 ships to scout human defenses. Commander Vorth watched the tactical display from his flagship, studying the primitive vessels that had appeared on their sensors. The humans had spread their forces thin across the outer planets. Exactly what he expected from a panicking species facing extinction. Energy readings suggest basic fusion drives and projectile weapons, his tactical officer reported. No biomechanical integration, no adaptive armor. Their largest ships are smaller than our escorts. Vorth had conquered 47 different species during his career. The pattern was always the same. Initial defiance, desperate resistance, then collapse when they realized how outmatched they were. These humans would be no different. The scout fleet moved toward Jupiter, where several human ships waited in orbit around the gas giant. Standard formation, standard approach vectors. The humans would probably try to fight from behind the planet's radiation field, using it as a shield. Instead, something impossible happened. David Park had positioned his destroyer squadron inside Jupiter's upper atmosphere, hiding in the toxic clouds where no sane pilot would fly. The gas giant's immense gravity well masked their heat signatures, making them invisible to conventional sensors. When the hegemony scouts passed overhead, David's ships erupted from the storm like ancient sea monsters rising from the deep. All ships, execute Icarus pattern, David ordered. The human destroyers climbed out of Jupiter's atmosphere at maximum burn, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric friction. Any other species would have considered this suicide. The stress should have torn the ships apart. But human engineers had built their vessels to survive anything. The lead hegemony ship tried to turn, but David had calculated the intercept perfectly. His destroyer rammed into the alien vessel's side at nearly a quarter light speed, punching through its biomechanical hull like a spear through paper. Both ships exploded in a ball of plasma that could be seen from Mars. What just happened? Vorth demanded as the tactical display showed one of his scouts simply vanishing. Before his tactical officer could answer, the second human squadron attacked. These ships emerged from the asteroid belt, using chunks of rock as shields while they closed distance. When the hegemony vessels fired their adaptive weapons, the humans simply abandoned their damaged ships and transferred to backup vessels hidden among the asteroids. They're using their own ships as decoys, the tactical officer said, confusion clear in his voice. The second hegemony scout fell to a coordinated missile strike from 6 different directions. Its biomechanical systems tried to adapt, growing new armor plating and defensive structures, but the humans kept changing their attack pattern. Energy weapons, kinetic rounds, explosive charges, even pieces of debris fired from magnetic launchers. The alien ship's adaptive systems couldn't keep up with the chaos. Vorth watched his third scout ship flee back toward the main fleet, its hull scarred and its biomechanical components struggling to repair battle damage. In 30 minutes, the humans had destroyed 2 advanced warships using tactics that defied military logic. Send a message to High Command, Vorth ordered. Request additional forces for the Sol system, sir. These are primitives with basic technology. Surely the main fleet can send the message, Vorth snapped. Meanwhile, David Park floated in the escape pod from his destroyed destroyer, watching the wreckage burn against Jupiter's colorful clouds. His ship was gone along with 30 good people, but they had proved something important. The enemy could be hurt. This is Park to Fleet Command, he radioed. Phase 1 complete. The aliens can adapt to standard tactics, but they get confused when we do something crazy. Rebecca's voice crackled back through the communication link. Understood. How did they react to the ramming attack? Their ship tried to grow armor spikes to prevent boarding. It didn't expect us to just blow everything up. Rebecca had studied the reports from other conquered worlds. Every species had tried to fight the hegemony using established military doctrine. Careful formations, strategic retreats, defensive positions. The biomechanical ships had adapted to every conventional tactic, but humans didn't think like other species. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing each other, developing strategies that prioritized victory over survival. While other species fought to preserve their forces, humans fought to win. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone," Rebecca broadcasted across the fleet network. "The enemy has taken the bait. They think we're desperate and disorganized. Let's prove them right." The human fleet scattered further, abandoning any pretense of formation flying. Ships hid in asteroid fields, behind moons, even in the radioactive zones around gas giant magnetospheres. To outside observers, it looked like complete chaos. That was exactly what Rebecca wanted. The hegemony main fleet accelerated toward Earth, confident that they could sweep aside the scattered human forces. Vorth's bioships had adapted their armor based on the earlier engagement, growing thicker plating and point defense systems designed to stop ramming attacks. They had learned from the first encounter. That was their strength, the ability to evolve and improve with each battle. But they had made a crucial error. They assumed humans would keep using the same tactics. As the alien fleet approached Mars, Lisa Rodriguez launched her fighter squadron from hidden positions in the asteroid belt. But instead of attacking directly, her ships began pushing large asteroids toward the enemy formation. "What are they doing?" Vorth's tactical officer asked. "Trying to create a debris field," Vorth replied. "Primitive area denial tactics." He was wrong. The humans weren't trying to block the hegemony's path. They were turning the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. When the first asteroid struck a hegemony cruiser, its biomechanical hull adapted quickly, growing crumple zones and shock absorbers. The ship survived with minimal damage. The second asteroid hit the same ship 60 seconds later, striking the same location. The hull had time to adapt. The third asteroid arrived 3 minutes after that. And the fourth, and the fifth. By the 10th impact, the biomechanical systems were exhausted from constant regeneration. The ship's adaptive armor finally failed, and the vessel broke apart under the relentless bombardment. "They're using sustained pressure," the tactical officer realized, "wearing down our adaptive systems through repeated attacks on the same targets." Vorth stared at the tactical display as more of his ships fell to the human asteroid barrage. The aliens had found a weakness in biomechanical technology. Adaptation took energy and time. Hit the same system repeatedly, and eventually it would fail. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Vorth ordered. "We need to break contact and reassess." But the humans weren't finished. As the hegemony fleet tried to retreat, James Wright's cruiser squadron emerged from behind Mars, their weapons charged and ready. "Welcome to human space," Wright radioed on all frequencies. "Hope you brought spare parts." The real battle was about to begin. Supreme Commander Vorth had never met a species that answered surrender demands with laughter. His massive flagship dominated the center of the hegemony fleet, its biomechanical hull stretching over 5 kilometers from bow to stern. Living weapon systems pulsed along its surface, ready to adapt to any threat. Around him, 300 warships maintained perfect formation, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. This was the force that had broken the Stellar Republic, crushed the Hive collectives, and reduced the proud warriors of Antares to cosmic dust. No species had ever survived first contact with the full hegemony fleet. "Open communication channels," Vorth commanded as they approached Earth's defensive perimeter. Standard conquest protocol. The message went out across all frequencies, translated into every known language. The same words that had been spoken to dozens of civilizations before their destruction. "Attention, primitive species. This is Supreme Commander Vorth of the hegemony. You have been selected for absorption into our collective. Surrender your military forces and submit to integration. Resistance will result in total extinction. You have 1 hour to comply." Then they waited. Usually the target species would respond with desperate pleas for negotiation, or threats they couldn't back up, or simply terrified silence. Instead, every human ship in the solar system responded simultaneously. "Welcome to Earth. You picked the wrong species." The message came from destroyers hiding in asteroid fields, cruisers lurking behind moons, fighters scattered throughout the outer planets, and the defense stations orbiting Earth itself. Hundreds of voices speaking in unison, not with fear or anger, but with something Vorth had never heard before in a first contact situation. Amusement. "Sir," his communications officer reported. "They're broadcasting something else." The secondary transmission was audio only, but it reached every hegemony ship in the fleet. Music of all things. A driving rhythm that seemed designed for battle, with lyrics about fighting against impossible odds and never giving up. "What is this?" Vorth asked. "It appears to be a war song, sir." Vorth had studied human culture during the approach to their system. They were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space travel. Their technology was primitive, their military scattered across multiple colonies. By all logical analysis, they should be cowering in fear. Instead, they were singing. "Sir, the humans are moving," the tactical officer announced. On the holographic display, dots of light began shifting throughout the solar system, but instead of forming defensive lines or retreating to strongholds, the human ships were spreading out even further. Some disappeared entirely, vanishing behind planets or into dense asteroid fields. "They're abandoning formation entirely," the tactical officer continued. "This level of dispersion makes no tactical sense. They can't provide mutual support or coordinate attacks." Vorth studied the chaotic pattern of human ship movements. Every other species had tried to match hegemony formation tactics, creating organized battle lines that his forces could predict and counter. The humans were doing the opposite. Perhaps they know they cannot win, Vorth mused. They scattered to make the final hunt more challenging. He was wrong again. Lisa Rodriguez watched the alien fleet from her fighter's cockpit, hidden in the shadow of Europa. Her squadron had spent the last week rigging the moon's ice deposits with explosives, turning the entire satellite into a weapon. "Dragon Squadron, this is Rodriguez. The big fish are in range. Time to go fishing." She triggered the detonation sequence. Massive explosions erupted across Europa's surface, launching billions of tons of ice and rock into space. But this wasn't random destruction. The humans had calculated the trajectory of every fragment. The debris cloud expanded, outward like a shotgun blast aimed directly at the hegemony formation. "Evasive action," Vorth ordered as his sensors detected the incoming projectiles. His bioships responded quickly, their adaptive hulls growing additional armor and point defense systems. Most of the ice fragments were destroyed or deflected harmlessly. The hegemony fleet maintained formation and continued toward Earth. "Minimal damage," the tactical officer reported. Their attack was ineffective. Vorth nodded, but something bothered him. The humans had to know that debris attack would fail against adaptive armor, so why had they wasted the effort? He got his answer 30 minutes later when James Wright's cruiser squadron attacked from the opposite direction. Wright had positioned his ships near Saturn's rings, using the planet's massive ice formations as camouflage. When the hegemony fleet passed within range, his cruisers emerged from hiding and opened fire with everything they had. But they weren't aiming at the alien ships. They were targeting Saturn's rings. "What are they shooting at?" Vorth demanded. "The planet's ring system, sir. They're destabilizing the orbital mechanics." Millions of tons of ice and rock that had orbited Saturn for billions of years suddenly found their paths disrupted. The entire ring system began to collapse inward, creating a cascade effect that spread throughout Saturn's gravitational field. "Sir, we need to change course," the navigation officer announced. "The gravitational disturbances are affecting our flight path." As the hegemony fleet struggled to navigate around Saturn's collapsing rings, David Park struck from yet another unexpected direction. His destroyer squadron had hidden themselves in the gas giant's upper atmosphere, their hulls modified with heat-resistant armor. "All ships, execute Phoenix Protocol," David ordered. His destroyers erupted from Saturn's roiling clouds like meteors, their hulls glowing white-hot from atmospheric friction. They had turned themselves into kinetic weapons, using the planet's gravity to accelerate to incredible speeds. The lead destroyer struck a hegemony cruiser amidships, punching completely through its biomechanical hull before exploding in a brilliant flash. The alien ship tried to adapt, growing emergency bulkheads and repair systems, but the damage was too severe. It broke apart and fell into Saturn's gravity well. "They're using kamikaze tactics," the tactical officer reported, his voice tinged with confusion. "They're deliberately destroying their own ships." Vorth watched as 2 more of his cruisers fell to human suicide attacks. The biomechanical systems could adapt to many things, but they couldn't compensate for complete structural failure caused by relativistic impacts. "These humans fight like they have nothing to lose," he muttered. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." This time it was Admiral Rebecca Stone herself. speaking from the bridge of the Terran Defense Command ship in Earth orbit. Supreme Commander Vorth, this is Admiral Stone of the Terran Defense Fleet. I wanted to thank you for the excellent target practice. Your biomechanical ships are interesting, but they have one critical weakness. Vorth leaned forward. What weakness? Rebecca's image smiled coldly. They're designed to fight logical opponents. We stopped being logical about 5,000 years ago. As if to prove her point, explosions began erupting throughout the hegemony formation, not from external attacks but from within the alien ships themselves. Sir, we have internal detonations on multiple vessels, the tactical officer announced. It appears the humans somehow placed explosive devices aboard our ships. That's impossible. When could they have? Vorth stopped as he realized the truth. The debris from Europa, the ice fragments from Saturn's rings, the wreckage from destroyed human ships, it had all contained hidden surprises. Tiny bombs, sensor devices, even boarding pods small enough to slip past defensive screens. The humans hadn't been making random attacks. They had been seeding the entire battlefield with weapons. Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet, the sensor officer reported. They appear to be preparing for a coordinated strike. Vorth looked at the tactical display, where hundreds of human ships had emerged from hiding and were moving into position around his fleet. They had turned the entire solar system into a trap, and he had led his forces directly into it. All ships, emergency acceleration, he ordered. We need to break out of this system immediately. But it was too late. The humans had been planning this moment since the first scout ships arrived. Every move had been calculated, every sacrifice planned, every seemingly random attack part of a larger strategy. The trap was about to close, and Supreme Commander Vorth was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. These weren't primitives cowering before superior technology. They were predators who had been pretending to be prey. The explosion that consumed Captain Rodriguez's fighter squadron lit up the dark side of Mars like a second sun. Rodriguez had led her pilots into the heart of the hegemony formation, not to destroy enemy ships but to deliver a message. Each fighter carried a single quantum torpedo, designed not for maximum damage but for maximum chaos. When they detonated simultaneously, they created electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the biomechanical coordination systems linking the alien fleet. For exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the hegemony ships couldn't communicate with each other. That was all the time James Wright needed. His cruiser squadron had been waiting in the shadow of Phobos, their weapon systems powered down to avoid detection. The moment Rodriguez's attack severed the alien communication network, Wright's ships came online and opened fire with everything they had. Target the command nodes, Wright ordered his gunners. Don't try to destroy them. Just keep them confused. Human military doctrine had evolved over centuries of warfare against other humans. They understood something that no other species had grasped. Sometimes the goal wasn't to destroy the enemy, but to make them destroy themselves. Wright's cruisers fired at the hegemony flagship's sensory arrays, not its weapons or engines. The biomechanical systems responded by growing additional sensors and communication equipment, exactly as designed. But each adaptation drew energy from other systems, gradually weakening the ship's overall efficiency. Meanwhile, throughout the solar system, other human commanders executed similar tactics. They attacked life support systems, forcing the aliens to strengthen environmental controls. They targeted navigation arrays, causing biomechanical ships to grow redundant guidance systems. They struck at fuel storage areas, making the enemy vessels develop additional power sources. Every adaptation weakened something else. Every improvement created a new vulnerability. Supreme Commander Vorth watched his tactical display with growing alarm as his fleet's performance steadily degraded. His ships were becoming stronger in individual areas but weaker overall, like a body that built too much muscle in one limb at the expense of all others. Sir, the humans are using some form of resource depletion strategy, his tactical officer reported. They're not trying to destroy us directly. They're forcing our biomechanical systems to exhaust themselves through constant adaptation. Vorth had never encountered such tactics. Every other species fought to disable or destroy enemy vessels as quickly as possible. The humans seemed content to slowly wear down their opponents through persistent, seemingly minor attacks. Order all ships to limit biomechanical responses, Vorth commanded. Stop adapting to minor threats, but it was too late. The human attacks had triggered automatic systems throughout the hegemony fleet. Biomechanical organisms couldn't simply ignore threats. They were programmed to adapt and survive. The ships continued modifying themselves even as their overall efficiency plummeted. David Park observed the enemy fleet's growing confusion from his new command ship, a heavy destroyer pulled from the Mars Colonial Defense Force. His previous vessel had been sacrificed in the initial attacks. But that was simply the cost of war. Humans understood loss in ways other species didn't. They had fought each other for millennia, developing strategies that assumed casualties and planned for sacrifice, while other civilizations fought to preserve their forces. Humans fought to achieve objectives. All squadrons, commence Pattern Delta, Park transmitted to the scattered human forces. Pattern Delta was pure insanity by galactic standards. It involved human ships deliberately damaging themselves to appear disabled, then using their apparent helplessness to lure enemy vessels into close range. When hegemony ships approached to finish off the crippled human vessels, they found themselves facing perfectly functional weapons systems and coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The alien biomechanical systems tried to adapt to this deception, developing better sensors to detect truly disabled ships, but the humans kept changing their tactics using real damage, fake damage, partial damage, and combinations of all three. The enemy adaptation systems couldn't keep up with the constant variations. "Sir," Forth's communications officer announced, "we're receiving reports from multiple sectors. Human vessels are using their own ships as weapons." Borth studied the tactical data streaming in from across the battlefield. Human ships were ramming into his vessels, but not in simple suicide attacks. They were using calculated impacts to disable specific systems, then evacuating their crews to other vessels while the damaged ships continued fighting on automated control. Some human vessels were even separating into multiple parts, creating smaller targets that could attack from different angles before reassembling into larger configurations. The biomechanical adaptation systems couldn't decide how to respond to enemies that kept changing their fundamental nature. "These tactics are impossible," the tactical officer muttered. "No species fights like this. They're treating their own ships as expendable resources." That was exactly right, and it was why the hegemony was losing. Admiral Stone watched the battle unfold from Earth's orbital command station, tracking the movements of both fleets across multiple displays. The human strategy was working, but at a terrible cost. She had already lost 30% of her forces, and the main engagement hadn't even begun. Any other species would have retreated by now, seeking to preserve their remaining ships for a more favorable engagement. But humans had learned a crucial lesson from their own history. Sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're getting priority transmissions from the Galactic Council. They want to know why we're not retreating." Stone smiled grimly. The Council still didn't understand. They thought this was about saving human lives or preserving human civilization. They were wrong. "Send a message to the Council," she ordered. "Tell them we're not retreating because we're not losing." On the tactical display, the hegemony fleet was beginning to fragment. Ships that had fought in perfect coordination for centuries were now operating independently, their biomechanical systems too exhausted from constant adaptation to maintain fleet-wide communication. The aliens had made a critical error. They had assumed that superior technology would automatically lead to victory, but technology was just a tool, and tools were only as effective as the minds that wielded them. Human minds had been shaped by warfare in ways that no other species could match. They understood that victory often required sacrifice. That strength could come from apparent weakness, and that the best way to defeat an adaptive enemy was to force them to adapt until they broke. Lisa Rodriguez's replacement squadron emerged from the asteroid belt. Their fighters loaded with a new type of weapon, kinetic penetrators designed specifically to overwhelm biomechanical repair systems. Instead of causing massive damage, these weapons created thousands of small holes that the alien ships had to constantly repair. "Dragon Squadron to all units," Rodriguez radioed. "The enemy is learning to counter our big attacks. Time to teach them about death by 1,000 cuts." The human fighters swarmed over the hegemony fleet like angry wasps, each one delivering dozens of minor wounds that forced continuous adaptation responses. The biomechanical ships began to literally exhaust themselves trying to keep up with the repairs. Vorth watched his fleet's combat efficiency continue to decline. as his ship struggled with resource depletion and system overload. The humans had found the one weakness his people had never considered. Their greatest strength could become their greatest vulnerability if pushed too far. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "we need to consider withdrawal. Our biomechanical systems are approaching critical failure levels." Vorth stared at the tactical display, watching human ships dart between his vessels like predators harassing a wounded animal. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing an enemy that understood him better than he understood them. The humans had studied biomechanical technology and found its limits. They had analyzed hegemony tactics and developed counters. Most importantly, they had recognized that the key to victory wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology. It was superior thinking. The quantum cascade began at exactly 1347 hours, Earth Standard Time. Deep within the hull of every human vessel in the solar system, engineers had spent months installing identical devices. Not weapons, not shields, not communication equipment, but something far more dangerous. Quantum resonance cores linked to a single activation frequency. Admiral Stone stood before the primary control console on Earth's command station, her finger hovering over a simple red button. Around her, the command staff worked in tense silence, monitoring the battle that raged across the entire solar system. The hegemony fleet was winning. Despite all their clever tactics and desperate sacrifices, the humans were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers and superior technology. 300 alien warships against less than 100 remaining human vessels. The mathematics were brutal and unavoidable, but mathematics had never been humanity's strong point. They preferred to change the equation entirely. "Admiral," the tactical officer announced, "hegemony forces are converging on Earth's orbital perimeter. They'll be in bombardment range in 20 minutes. Stone nodded. The aliens had finally recognized that all human tactics were designed to buy time, not achieve victory through conventional means. Supreme Commander Vorth had regrouped his scattered forces and was making a direct assault on humanity's homeworld. It was exactly what Stone had been waiting for. "Signal. All human vessels," she ordered. "Execute Protocol Omega. All ships, all crews, all stations." The message went out across every human communication channel, reaching destroyers hiding in asteroid fields, cruisers fighting desperate holding actions near Mars, and fighters conducting hit-and-run attacks throughout the outer planets. "This is Admiral Stone to all Terran Defense Forces. We have shown the galaxy what humans can do when we're angry. Now let's show them what we can do when we're desperate." She pressed the button. Every quantum core in every human ship activated simultaneously, creating a cascade effect that propagated through folded spacetime itself. The energy release was not explosive in the traditional sense. Instead, it created localized distortions in the fabric of reality. Near Jupiter, the first distortion formed as a shimmering sphere of twisted space. Gravity fluctuated wildly within the field, creating tidal forces that could tear apart any object that came too close. Similar fields appeared throughout the solar system, each one anchored by the quantum signature of a human vessel. Supreme Commander Vorth watched his tactical display in confusion as strange energy readings appeared across the battlefield. "What are the humans doing?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The energy signatures don't match any known weapon system." The answer became clear when the first hegemony cruiser strayed too close to one of the quantum fields. The ship's biomechanical hull began stretching and contracting, as conflicting gravitational forces pulled it in different directions. Its adaptive systems tried to compensate, growing structural supports and reinforcement beams, but they couldn't adapt to fundamental violations of physics. The alien vessel simply came apart. Its component atoms scattered across several light minutes of space. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with alarm, "the quantum fields are expanding. They're creating a navigation hazard throughout the system." That was an understatement. The human quantum cores had turned the entire solar system into a maze of gravitational anomalies. Space routes that had been safe moments before became death traps. Stable orbits became chaotic spirals. The orderly physics that governed space travel had been replaced by localized regions, where the laws of nature no longer applied. David, Park's destroyer squadron, had positioned themselves near one of the larger quantum fields, using its gravitational effects as both shield and weapon. When hegemony ships tried to attack, Park's vessels would dart close to the field's edge, using the gravity distortions to accelerate to impossible speeds before breaking away at the last moment. The pursuing alien ships couldn't match these maneuvers. Their biomechanical systems tried to adapt to the strange physics, but adaptation required understanding, and no organic mind could comprehend the mathematics of folded spacetime. All human vessels. "This is Park," he broadcasted to the scattered fleet. "The quantum fields are stable. Repeat, the maze is active. Time to go hunting." The humans had spent months practicing combat maneuvers in simulated quantum fields, learning to navigate the twisted space around each distortion. They understood the safe approaches, the danger zones, and the optimal attack vectors. Most importantly, they knew how to use the field's gravitational effects to multiply the force of their weapons. Lisa Rodriguez led her fighter squadron through a complex weaving pattern between 3 overlapping quantum fields, using their gravitational interactions to build up tremendous velocity. When she finally broke free of the maze, her fighters were moving at nearly half the speed of light. The kinetic energy of their attack was devastating. Her squadron punched through a hegemony battle group like bullets through paper, destroying 5 alien ships in a single pass. "Dragon Squadron to all units," Rodriguez reported. "The quantum slingshot maneuver works perfectly. The aliens can't adapt to weapons that violate conservation of energy." That was the key insight that had made the human strategy possible. Biomechanical adaptation worked by analyzing threats and developing appropriate countermeasures. But the quantum fields created situations where conventional physics no longer applied. The alien systems couldn't adapt to phenomena that shouldn't exist. Supreme Commander Vorth found his fleet trapped in an ever-shrinking volume of normal space as the quantum fields continued to expand. His ships were powerful and adaptable, but they were still bound by the basic laws of physics. The humans had somehow managed to suspend those laws in localized areas. "Sir," his navigation officer announced, "we're receiving reports from all sectors. Our ships are being destroyed by impossible attacks. Kinetic strikes with too much energy, gravitational weapons that shouldn't exist, and coordinated maneuvers that require faster-than-light communication." Vorth studied the tactical display, watching his fleet's positions shift as they tried to avoid the expanding quantum maze. The humans had turned their own solar system into a weapon, creating an environment where their enemies' advantages became meaningless. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. 47 destroyed, another 63 damaged. "Sir, we need to withdraw from this system immediately." But withdrawal was no longer possible. The quantum fields had expanded to block all major exit vectors from the solar system. The hegemony fleet was trapped in a gradually shrinking pocket of normal space, surrounded by regions where the laws of physics had been rewritten by human desperation. Admiral Stone watched the enemy fleet's predicament from Earth's command station, satisfaction mixing with grief as she counted the cost of victory. Every human ship that had activated a quantum core was gone, consumed in the energy cascade that created the gravitational maze. She had sacrificed 2/3 of her fleet to create this trap. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the hegemony flagship. Put it through." Supreme Commander Vorth's image appeared on the main screen, his alien features showing something Stone had never seen from the hegemony before: uncertainty. "Admiral Stone," Vorth said, "what have you done?" "What humans always do when we're cornered," Stone replied. "We changed the rules of the game." Vorth looked around his bridge where his officers were struggling to find solutions to an impossible tactical situation. "Your tactics violate the fundamental principles of warfare. You're destroying your own forces to create battlefield conditions that benefit no one." "That's where you're wrong," Stone said. "They benefit us perfectly. You see, Commander, your biomechanical ships are designed to adapt to any threat, but they can only adapt within the boundaries of known physics. We've removed those boundaries." The truth was becoming clear to Vorth as he watched more of his ships fall to impossible attacks. The humans had been willing to sacrifice their technological advantage, their numerical superiority, and even their own lives to create conditions where pure adaptability became irrelevant. In the twisted space around the quantum fields, victory went not to the strongest or most advanced, but to whoever best understood the new rules of engagement, and those rules had been written by humans, for humans. "This is madness," Vorth transmitted. Stone's expression was cold as vacuum. "No, Commander. This is war the way humans fight it, and you're about to learn why we're the species that never lost a war to anybody but ourselves." The last hegemony warship died at 1821 hours, torn apart by gravitational forces that should not have existed in normal space. Supreme Commander Vorth's flagship had held out the longest, its massive biomechanical systems adapting desperately to each impossible attack. Hull sections grew and shifted. Weapon arrays reconfigured themselves and defensive screens multiplied beyond all reason. But adaptation required energy, and energy was finite. When the ship's biomechanical core finally exhausted itself, the vessel simply stopped fighting back. It drifted helplessly in the twisted space near Jupiter, its living systems too depleted to maintain basic functions. Admiral Stone stood at the observation window of Earth's command station, watching the distant flashes of light that marked the end of the greatest space battle in galactic history. Around her, the command staff worked in stunned silence, hardly believing that they had survived. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony flagship." Stone turned back to the command center. "Put it through." Vorth appeared on the screen, but he looked different now. The alien commander's features showed something Stone had never expected to see from the Hegemony. "Respect." "Admiral Stone," Vorth began, his voice carrying a tone of weary acceptance. "My fleet is destroyed. My bioships are exhausted beyond recovery. By the laws of warfare, I should call upon my reserve forces to continue this battle." Stone waited, knowing there was more. "But I will not," Vorth continued. "Your species has taught me something I thought impossible. You have shown me a form of warfare that transcends mere technology or adaptation. You fight with your minds, not just your weapons." The alien commander paused, looking around his dying bridge where biomechanical systems sparked and failed throughout the room. "We came here expecting to face another frightened species begging for mercy. Instead, we found predators disguised as prey. We underestimated not your technology but your nature." Stone nodded slowly. "What will you do now, Commander?" "I will send a message to Hegemony High Command. They will be told that humanity is to be avoided at all costs. Your species will be classified as a strategic threat of the highest order. And if they don't listen," Vorth's expression became something that might have been a smile, "then they will learn what I learned today. That some prey fights back in ways that make the hunter become the hunted." The transmission ended, leaving Stone alone with her thoughts. Through the observation window, she could see the wreckage of two fleets scattered across the solar system. Human ships and alien vessels drifted together in the darkness, united in destruction. The cost had been enormous. Of the 300 ships that had defended Earth, fewer than 50 remained operational. Thousands of good people had died to purchase humanity's survival, but they had won something more valuable than mere survival. They had won recognition. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures at the system's edge." Stone turned, fearing that hegemony reinforcements had arrived. Instead, her sensors showed ships from across the galaxy, vessels belonging to the Galactic Council, the Stellar Republic, even representatives from species she had never encountered. They had come to witness the impossible. A young species that had defeated the unstoppable hegemony. The first communication came from Chancellor Mirak of the Galactic Council, his synthesized voice carrying tones of amazement and concern. "Admiral Stone, this is Chancellor Mirak aboard the Council ship Harmony. We monitored your battle from long range. What we witnessed defies conventional military analysis. How did you achieve victory against such overwhelming odds?" Stone considered her answer carefully. The truth was both simple and complex. Humans had won because they thought differently about warfare itself. While other species fought to preserve their forces and minimize losses, humans fought to achieve victory regardless of cost. "Chancellor," she replied, "we won because we understood something about war that the hegemony didn't. Superior technology and adaptive capabilities mean nothing if your enemy is willing to rewrite the fundamental rules of engagement by sacrificing your own fleet to create those gravitational anomalies, by recognizing that sometimes the only way to defeat an adaptive enemy is to create conditions they cannot adapt to. We turned our entire solar system into a weapon designed specifically to counter biomechanical technology." More transmissions flooded in from the gathered ships. Military observers wanted to understand human tactics. Diplomatic representatives sought to establish formal relations with the species that had broken the hegemony's perfect record. Scientists requested, data on the quantum field generators that had made the victory possible. But perhaps the most important message came from an unexpected source, other species that had survived hegemony attacks. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Trelak of the Remnant Fleet. A voice crackled through the communication system. We represent the survivors of worlds the hegemony conquered. For decades, we have lived as refugees, believing that resistance was impossible. You have shown us that we were wrong. Stone felt a weight settle on her shoulders, the weight of responsibility that came with becoming a symbol of hope for others. Over the following days, the true scope of humanity's victory became clear. The hegemony, faced with their first major defeat in centuries, had withdrawn their expansion fleets and entered a period of strategic reassessment. Dozens of species that had been marked for conquest were reprieved, at least temporarily. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity as a major military power, offering them a seat on the Strategic Defense Committee. Trade agreements followed, along with technology exchanges and cultural programs. But the most significant change was in how other species viewed warfare itself. Human tactical concepts began spreading throughout the galaxy. The idea that victory sometimes required sacrificing immediate advantages for long-term gains. That adaptability meant being willing to change fundamental assumptions about how battles should be fought. Admiral Stone stood in her office aboard the rebuilt Terran Defense Command Station, reviewing reports from across human space. The fleet was being rebuilt with new ships incorporating lessons learned from the battle. More importantly, human military doctrine was being studied and adapted by allies throughout the galaxy. Admiral, her aide announced, "There's someone here to see you." Captain David Park entered the office, still bearing the scars from his multiple ship losses during the battle. He had become something of a legend among the fleet, the officer who had pioneered the kamikaze tactics that helped turn the tide. "David," Stone said, rising from her desk, "how are the new recruits?" "Eager to learn," Park replied. "Word has spread about what we accomplished here. Every human colony is sending their best pilots and officers to join the defense fleet. We'll be stronger than ever within a year." Stone nodded, then moved to the observation window. Outside, construction crews were building the first of humanity's new fortress stations. Defensive platforms designed to protect not just Earth, but any world threatened by species like the hegemony. "Do you think they'll come back?" Park asked. "Someday," Stone replied. "The hegemony doesn't forgive defeats. They'll study what we did, develop new adaptive strategies, and return with countermeasures for our tactics. And when they do," Stone smiled, thinking of the human engineers already designing new weapons, new strategies, new ways to confound enemies who thought they understood how war should be fought. When they do, they'll discover that humans have one more advantage they never accounted for. We don't just adapt to changing conditions, we never stop evolving our methods. By the time they return, we'll be fighting in ways they can't even imagine. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for galactic freedom had just begun. And throughout the galaxy, other species were learning a lesson that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the species that had turned warfare into an art form. They had proven that sometimes the best way to defeat a superior enemy was not to match their strength, but to make strength irrelevant. In the depths of space, the wreckage of two fleets continued to drift among the slowly fading quantum fields, a monument to the day when humanity showed the galaxy that some species refused to go quietly into the night. They had earned their place among the stars not through peaceful exploration or technological achievement, but by doing what humans had always done best, finding ways to win fights they had no business winning. The age of human warfare had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.